In a world ravaged by the undead, humanity's last hope lies with a group of survivors holed up in an old, fortified school building. The world outside is a wasteland, a constant reminder of the unrelenting destruction caused by the zombie apocalypse. Yet, this small band of survivors refuses to give up, despite the overwhelming odds against them. The story begins with Jack, a former teacher turned leader of the group, surveying the crumbling cityscape through a broken window. The streets, once bustling with life, are now empty, save for the occasional groaning figure of a zombie shuffling aimlessly. Inside the school, a few survivors work to reinforce barricades, while others gather whatever remaining supplies they can find. Tensions are high. Hope is running thin. Jack, however, refuses to accept defeat. He knows that the undead are getting closer, and the group's supplies are dwindling. He has a plan. But it's risky. The last remaining survivors of this makeshift community, which include young Ella, a teenager with a natural flair for mechanics, and Mark, a former soldier who once fought on the front lines, are growing restless. They all have one thing in common, a relentless desire to survive, even if it means fighting their way through the horde. As night falls, the group gathers around a makeshift fire, discussing their plan for survival. Mark is concerned. He knows the danger they face when they step outside the school. The zombies are smarter now, more organized. He argues that they need to stay put, hold out and wait for rescue. But Jack, with a look of determination, counters that if they don't take action now, there won't be anything left to fight for. He speaks of the few remaining safe zones scattered across the country, places that still offer a glimmer of hope. But they're not going to come to them. They need to fight their way to one of them. Ella, her hands shaking as she adjusts a homemade weapon, agrees. "If we don't go now, we're dead anyway," she says, her voice quiet but firm. The rest of the group listens in silence, their faces a mix of fear and resolve. After a long pause, the decision is made. As the group prepares to leave, they hear distant moans. The zombies are closing in on their position. The sound of growling and dragging feet echoes through the halls of the school. Jack knows it's time to act. The last push against the undead has begun. With the school's exit now blocked by a growing horde of zombies, the survivors must find another way out. But first, they need to fight their way through a maze of abandoned classrooms, corridors filled with the sound of creeping monsters. The tension rises as the survivors gather their weapons, makeshift spears, pipes, and even a few firearms scavenged from a nearby gun store. Each member of the group is ready to give their all. As they move out into the hallway, their breaths quicken, the fear of the unknown creeping in with each step. Jack leads the way, moving cautiously but with purpose, while Mark follows close behind, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. Ella, with her mechanical knowledge, has rigged a few traps to slow down the zombies. The group moves as one, their hearts beating in sync with the fear that fuels them. The fight to survive has begun, and they know that their resolve will be tested. But even as the undead close in, they cling to one thing, the will to fight. The air inside the school feels thick with tension as the survivors carefully make their way through the darkened hallways. The moans of the undead grow louder, reverberating off the walls. With every step, the group can feel the weight of the decision to leave their sanctuary behind. It's no longer just a matter of surviving another day, it's about proving that they still have control over their fate, no matter how dire the situation. Jack, leading the group with the flashlight gripped tightly in his hand, gestures for everyone to stay quiet. The hallways are eerily silent now, save for the occasional distant groan. Mark is on edge, his soldier instincts picking up every movement. "We need to keep moving, no time to waste," he whispers, his voice filled with urgency. But Jack shakes his head, signaling for the group to halt. "Patience," he mutters, "we can't afford to make any mistakes." Ella, walking in the rear, checks the traps she's set along the hallway. She had found old backpacks, rope, and loose cans from a nearby supply room and used them to create noise distractions for any approaching zombies. With a few quick adjustments, she's ready to spring them into action. If they get surrounded, it'll buy them precious moments to escape. As the group moves forward, they reach a set of double doors leading to the gymnasium, their chosen exit route. but as they peer inside, they see a large group of zombies milling about the room. Some are standing, others crawling across the floor. The gym, once a place of community and activity, now serves as a breeding ground for the undead. "We'll have to fight our way through," Jack says, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the decision. The group braces themselves for what's to come. The gym's large space could be an advantage, but the number of zombies makes it a dangerous battleground. Mark looks at Jack, his eyes narrowing. "We'll need a diversion," he says. "A big one. Something to pull their attention away from us." Ella steps forward, holding a handful of makeshift Molotov cocktails. "I can make them scatter," she suggests. Jack nods in approval, knowing that the noise and fire could give them the window they need to push through. The group takes their positions, ready for the inevitable chaos that will follow. Ella moves to the front and throws the first Molotov cocktail, its fiery arc lighting up the dark gym. It crashes into a pile of old gym mats, erupting into flames. The zombies immediately shift their attention, some lurching toward the fire while others grow confused. The survivors seize the opportunity. Jack, Mark, and Ella charge into the gym, weaving between the zombies as they fight their way forward. The gym is filled with a cacophony of sounds, roars of the undead, the crackle of the fire, and the occasional clang of weapons striking flesh. The survivors are on high alert, their adrenaline coursing through their veins as they push forward. Jack fights with calculated precision, his mind sharp despite the chaos. Mark is a blur of motion, taking down zombies left and right with swift, powerful strikes. Ella uses her traps to create distractions, sending zombies into areas where they are delayed long enough for the group to advance. But the fire begins to spread faster than they anticipated. The gym's ceiling creaks under the heat, and the smoke thickens. "We don't have much time," Mark shouts. Jack nods, realizing they can't afford to stay much longer. With a final push, they make their way to the gym's rear exit. Just as they reach the door, the building shakes. The sound of a collapsing roof echoes through the halls as the fire consumes the building. They've made it outside, but their victory feels hollow. The night air is cold and unforgiving, and the weight of their loss is already setting in. Looking back at the burning school, Jack feels the loss of their safe haven. But he knows that the fight isn't over yet. They've broken through the first barrier, but there's still a long way to go. As the group regroups in the parking lot, they take a moment to catch their breath. The sound of the undead closing in on the building is distant now, but it's a constant reminder that their fight for survival is far from over. And even as they glance at the dark horizon, they know one thing: they will continue to fight, no matter what. The survivors, exhausted but resolute, now find themselves standing in the cold night, surrounded by the remains of their old life. The parking lot, once filled with the hum of traffic and the chatter of school events, is now eerily silent, save for the distant groans of the undead and the crackling flames from the burning school. The world around them is a desolate wasteland. But in this chaos, they still hold on to one hope: the will to keep moving forward. Jack stands at the front, eyes scanning the horizon. The night is dark, with only the pale glow of distant streetlights cutting through the fog. The group must keep moving, but the road ahead is unknown. They need shelter, supplies, and most importantly, a plan. "We should head east," Jack suggests, turning to Mark and Ella. "There's a rumored safe zone about 50 miles from here. We have no other choice but to push forward." Mark, ever the realist, frowns. 50 miles through open terrain and zombie-infested areas? We're not going to make it without better supplies and a solid strategy. He casts a wary glance at their makeshift gear, nothing more than scavenged weapons and a few bags of rationed food. "We need to think this through." Ella, always the problem solver, steps forward. "We might be able to find some vehicles. There's an old gas station about 5 miles south of here. If it hasn't been overrun, we could scavenge for fuel and more supplies." Jack nods, impressed with her resourcefulness. "All right, we'll head there. But we keep a low profile. If we attract too much attention, we're done." The group begins to move cautiously, staying in the shadows and avoiding the main roads. Every step feels like a calculated risk, but the survivors are used to this by now. The fear of the unknown is always there, but it's balanced by the determination to survive. As they make their way through the city, the sounds of groaning zombies grow louder, and the group tightens their formation. Halfway to the gas station, they encounter their first major obstacle. A large group of zombies is gathered around a convenience store, blocking their path. The undead shuffle aimlessly, unaware of the survivors' presence. Jack signals for the group to stop and crouch low behind an abandoned car. They have two options: wait and hope the zombies leave, or take them on head-to-head. "I can't wait here," Mark whispers, the tension rising in his voice. "We'll be trapped if we don't move now." Jack thinks for a moment, then looks at Ella. "Any ideas?" Ella, always calm under pressure, pulls out a handful of small noise-making devices she had crafted earlier, whistles and cans that could be triggered to roll or jingle. "I can create a diversion," she says, her eyes scanning the area. "We can draw them away from the path and slip by." Jack gives a nod of approval. "Let's do it." Ella sets the devices in motion, and within moments, the sound of clattering cans and whistling whistles fills the air. The zombies' attention is immediately diverted. They shuffle toward the noise, leaving the path clear for the survivors. The group moves quickly and quietly, hearts racing as they pass by the distracted horde. Each step feels like a victory, but they know they can't let their guard down. There are always more zombies, always more threats just around the corner. As they approach the gas station, they're greeted by an unexpected sight. A group of survivors, about 5 in total, are huddled near the entrance, appearing to be in the middle of a heated conversation. At first, the two groups eye each other warily, unsure of whether they can trust one another. Jack steps forward cautiously, his hand on the grip of his weapon. "We're just passing through," Jack calls out, his voice steady but firm. "We need supplies and fuel. We'll be out of your way if you let us in." The leader of the group, a woman in her 30s named Rachel, eyes Jack for a moment, sizing him up. "You got food?" she asks bluntly, her voice hoarse from what must have been days of little water. Ella steps forward, holding up a small bag of dried fruit. "We've got some rations, but not much." Rachel seems to consider this for a moment before nodding. "All right. We'll trade supplies. But we don't trust easily. You stay out of our way, and we'll help you get what you need." It's an uneasy truce, but it's the best they've got. The two groups cautiously exchange supplies. Ella and Rachel trade mechanical parts for fuel, while Jack and Mark take a quick inventory of the surrounding area, making sure they're not walking into a trap. The other survivors keep a close eye on the newcomers, but the mutual need for survival is enough to keep things civil, at least for now. As the exchange concludes, Jack gives the group one last look. "We head out at first light," he says. "We're not staying here long." Rachel gives a nod, her expression hardening. "Understood. Just don't make the mistake of thinking we're here to babysit. We're in this alone, just like you." As the survivors finish their business and prepare to leave the gas station, Jack feels a renewed sense of determination. The group may have found an unexpected ally in Rachel's group, but Jack knows better than to trust anyone fully in this world. He's learned the hard way that the dead aren't the only threat they face. And as the survivors continue their journey, they realize that the road ahead will be filled with even greater challenges. But one thing is clear: they're ready to face whatever comes next. As the first light of dawn breaks across the desolate city, the survivors gather outside the gas station, ready to continue their journey. The early morning air is crisp, the sky a dull gray, reflecting the world's bleakness. Jack stands at the front, leading the group with a sense of urgency. Despite their brief respite, he knows they cannot afford to waste any more time. The zombies will be out in full force soon, and every moment spent in one place increases the risk of being overrun. The group, now including Rachel and her people, sets off, moving in tight formation. The alliance is still uneasy, with Jack and Mark eyeing Rachel's group warily, while Ella exchanges a few words with the other survivors, trying to gauge their trustworthiness. For now, the two groups have common goals: survival and reaching the rumored safe zone. But Jack knows that trust is fragile in these times, and one wrong move could shatter this fragile alliance. As they trek through the city's crumbling streets, the journey is quiet, punctuated only by the sound of footsteps and the occasional groan from the undead in the distance. The air is thick with tension, and every corner could hide a horde, waiting to spring. Despite the eerie calm, Jack remains vigilant, scanning every shadow, every alley. Hours pass, and the group makes slow but steady progress, navigating through abandoned buildings and alleyways. But as they round a corner near a collapsed shopping center, they hear something that stops them dead in their tracks: voices. Low, hushed, but unmistakable. "Stay back," Jack orders, signaling for the group to take cover. The survivors crouch behind an overturned car, listening intently. The voices belong to Rachel's group. Two of her people are speaking in hushed tones, but their words are clear enough to make Jack's blood run cold. "Tonight's the night. We'll take the truck and leave them behind," one of the voices says. "They trust us." "This will be easy," the other voice replies, a laugh in their tone. "They won't even see it coming." Jack's heart sinks as the full weight of the betrayal hits him. Rachel's group, or at least some of them, plans to leave the rest of them behind, to steal the truck they had all been counting on for the next leg of their journey. They were never allies. They were just using the survivors as a means to get what they needed. Mark clenches his fists, ready to act, but Jack holds him back. "Not yet," Jack whispers. "We need to see how far they're willing to go." The two survivors in the distance continue their conversation, oblivious to the fact that they are being overheard. Jack's mind races, calculating their next move. He knows they can't let this betrayal slide, but the group's chances of survival are already slim, and taking on Rachel's people might make things worse. "We need to make sure the others don't know about this," Jack says quietly to Mark. "We can't let them panic." Mark nods, his jaw tight. "You're right. We'll deal with them when the time's right." As they wait, the two betrayers move off, heading toward the abandoned truck parked nearby. Jack watches their every move, his mind working to formulate a plan. He knows he can't trust Rachel anymore, but he also knows the truth: there's no way they can survive on their own in this hostile world. They need each other, even if they're being deceived. When the two betrayers are out of sight, Jack signals for the group to move forward. They can't afford to linger here much longer. If Rachel's people are planning to betray them, the best course of action is to confront them head-on. The group moves silently, following the path Rachel's group took toward the truck. As they approach, Jack takes a deep breath and gives one last look to Mark and Ella. They're ready. The confrontation is inevitable. "Rachel!" Jack calls out, his voice carrying through the quiet air. The rest of the group freezes, and Jack sees the shock on Rachel's face as she turns toward him, her expression faltering for just a second. It's enough to let him know that they know they've been caught. "Jack, what are you doing here?" Rachel stammers, trying to cover her tracks. "You thought you could steal the truck and leave us behind," Jack says, his voice cold and steady. "But we overheard your little conversation. You were going to betray us." For a moment, there's silence. Rachel's eyes flicker between Jack and the rest of the group, her gaze hardening as realization sets in. "You don't understand," she says, her voice sharp now, the facade cracking. "We're doing what we have to do to survive. There's no room for sentiment in this world anymore." "Sentiment?" Mark sneers. "This isn't about sentiment. This is about survival, and you are willing to throw us to the wolves to save yourselves." "We'll survive," Rachel says, her tone defiant. "We've survived without you, and we'll survive again." The standoff is tense, the air thick with distrust. But Jack knows they can't afford to let this escalate into violence, not now, not when the undead could be closing in. "You want to survive? Fine. But you're not taking the truck." Rachel's eyes narrow, and for a brief moment, Jack wonders if she'll pull a weapon. But instead, she turns away, giving a sharp nod to her people. "Fine. We're done here. We'll go our own way." As Rachel and her group walk away, Jack feels a mix of relief and anger. They've been betrayed, but at least they won't have to deal with them anymore. The trust between the two groups is gone, shattered by the selfish actions of a few. But now, the survivors must face a new reality. They're on their own again. And in a world overrun by the undead, there's nothing more dangerous than being alone. With the betrayal behind them, the survivors are left in a tense silence. The tension between the group and Rachel's former allies lingers like a dark cloud. Despite the sense of relief that they no longer have to worry about their treacherous intentions, the road ahead feels heavier than ever. The trust they once had in strangers, however fleeting, has now crumbled. They are, once again, completely on their own. Jack stands in front of the truck, scanning the horizon as he tightens his grip on his weapon. The stolen vehicle, which had once seemed like their ticket to safety, now feels like a reminder of how quickly people can turn on each other when faced with desperation. "We're not safe yet," Jack mutters to Mark, who stands beside him, eyes narrowed as he surveys the area. "We've still got to get out of here, and it won't be easy." Mark nods, his expression grim. "We need to stay sharp. The undead are the least of our worries now." Ella approaches from behind, her footsteps barely audible. There's a gas station about 10 miles up the road. It's a small one, but it could have enough supplies to get us through the next few days. Jack looks back at the truck, then at the group. Their faces are weary, tired from the long journey and the strain of dealing with betrayal. "All right, let's head there. We'll get what we can and keep moving." The survivors pack up what little they have left, making sure to keep their weapons close and their movements low. The undead may be the main threat, but the true danger now is anyone who would use the chaos of the world to exploit others. They move cautiously, sticking to the shadows and taking the less traveled routes to avoid attracting attention. Their progress is slow, but at least they are moving forward, away from the broken alliances and the looming danger of Rachel's group. The day drags on, and by the time they reach the gas station, the sun is beginning to set. The small station sits on the edge of a crumbling town, its windows shattered, the sign hanging loosely from a rusted pole. A faint smell of decay lingers in the air as the survivors approach, their nerves heightened with each step. "We should check the perimeter first," Jack suggests, his voice low and steady. He signals for Mark and Ella to cover him while he moves toward the station's main entrance. They fan out, scanning the surroundings, searching for signs of life, or more accurately, signs of death. As Jack approaches the door, he hesitates. The silence is almost unnatural, too quiet for comfort. There's no movement, no sign of the undead milling around. Jack takes a deep breath and pushes the door open. It creaks on its hinges, a sound that sends a shiver down his spine. Inside, the gas station is a wreck. Shelves are overturned, debris litters the floor, and a faint, metallic odor hangs in the air. But what catches Jack's attention is a small pile of bags near the counter, supplies, it looks like, hastily packed and left behind. "This is it," Jack says, his voice barely a whisper. "We hit the jackpot." Ella moves forward cautiously, scanning the room for any signs of movement. "Hold on," she warns, her hand on Jack's shoulder. "We need to be careful. There's no telling who, or what, could be in here." Jack nods, understanding her caution. The last thing they need is to be caught off guard. He steps further into the room, eyes darting from one corner to the next. As he reaches the counter, a rustling sound echoes from the back of the station, followed by a low growl. The group freezes. The sound is unmistakable, there's something back there. "Get ready," Jack says, his voice urgent. He motions for the group to fan out, taking up defensive positions near the shelves. The growl grows louder, more distinct. It's not human, that much is certain. Without warning, a figure stumbles out from the back room, its movements jerky and unnatural. It's a zombie, but this one is different. Its skin is mottled, a sickly gray, and its eyes are clouded, with an unsettling emptiness that makes it all the more terrifying. This isn't one of the regular undead they've been used to encountering. This one is larger, more powerful, its movements quick and erratic. It's like nothing they've seen before. Jack doesn't hesitate. "Take it down," he commands. Mark moves first, rushing forward with his makeshift spear. He drives it into the creature's chest, but it barely falters. The zombie howls, thrashing wildly, its claws reaching for Mark. Ella steps in next, using her agility to dart around the creature and strike it from behind with a crowbar. The zombie stumbles, but it's not enough to stop it. Its strength is unlike anything they've encountered so far. Jack raises his gun and fires. The shot hits the zombie in the head, and for a moment, there's silence. The creature crumples to the ground, lifeless once again. "That was too close," Mark says, breathing heavily. "We need to be more careful." Jack wipes the sweat from his forehead, nodding. "I didn't expect something like that. We can't trust anything anymore, not the places we find, not the people we meet, and certainly not the creatures out there." With the immediate threat neutralized, the group regroups near the counter. Jack grabs a couple of bags of supplies, quickly scanning them for anything useful. He doesn't waste time savoring the victory. Every moment is precious, and every second spent in one place increases their chances of encountering more dangers, both living and undead. "All right, we've got what we need," Jack says, his voice firm. "We head out now. No more delays." As the group exits the gas station, the sun is almost fully set, casting long shadows across the broken landscape. Their path forward is uncertain, and the world around them is a constant reminder that safety is a fleeting illusion. But they're alive. And as long as they're alive, there's hope. And hope, Jack knows, is all they have left. The night falls over the survivors like a heavy blanket. The last light of the day disappears behind the shattered skyline, leaving them in the dark, their only source of illumination the faint glow of their flashlights and the moon above, hidden behind the thick clouds. The night is cold, and as the survivors move through the empty streets, a sense of unease settles in. The world around them feels as though it's been frozen in time, as though humanity never existed. The supplies they found at the gas station will only last a few days, but Jack doesn't dare think about that now. The group is tired, exhausted both physically and mentally, and every step feels heavier than the last. They're on the move again, leaving behind the faint hope of safety they'd found at the station. Now, the road ahead is uncertain, but the thought of resting too long feels like a death sentence. The undead may not be far behind, and worse still, there's the lingering threat of other hostile survivors. As they travel through the night, Jack feels the weight of the world pressing down on him. The flickering flashlight in his hand seems to symbolize the fragility of their hope. There's no guarantee they'll survive the night, let alone make it to the rumored safe zone. The world is broken, and Jack can't help but wonder if the safe zone is just another lie, another illusion meant to trick them into moving forward. Ella, who had been walking a few paces ahead, turns back to Jack, her face illuminated by the beam of her flashlight. "We need to find somewhere to rest soon," she says quietly, her voice tired. "We can't keep going like this." Jack nods, his expression grim. He knows she's right. The group has been pushing hard for days, and while they've managed to avoid most of the undead, their energy is running low. The last thing they need is to burn out before they reach safety. Up ahead, a faint light flickers in the distance, cutting through the darkness. At first, it seems like a trick of the mind, a fleeting hope that could disappear as quickly as it appeared. But then, it's unmistakable, a light. A lantern? A campfire? "Do you see that?" Mark's voice comes from behind Jack. His words are cautious, filled with suspicion. Could be another group. Jack holds up his hand, signaling for everyone to stop. "Stay quiet. Let's go check it out. We can't afford to be seen if it's a trap." The group moves silently through the streets, taking the long way around to avoid being noticed. As they get closer, the light grows brighter, and Jack can make out the faint outlines of a building, an old, dilapidated warehouse. The flickering light is coming from inside. When they're within a few hundred yards, Jack motions for the group to halt. "Ella, Mark, stay here. I'll check it out." Ella nods but looks worried. "Be careful. If they're hostile, don't hesitate to retreat." Jack doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he pulls his gun from its holster, checks the clip, and moves forward alone. The tension in the air is palpable, every step he takes careful and deliberate. The darkness seems to close in around him, making the shadows feel alive, watching him as he approaches the warehouse. He peers through a broken window, his breath fogging up the glass. Inside, he can make out the silhouettes of several people sitting around a fire. There's no immediate movement, no sign of weapons raised or aggression. But Jack knows better than to trust appearances. He steps back from the window, scanning the area for any other signs of danger. A trap is always a possibility. After a moment of consideration, Jack decides to move in closer, trying to stay out of sight. He slips through a gap in the warehouse's back door, the wood creaking under his weight. Inside, the firelight flickers, casting long shadows on the walls. The survivors gathered around it are murmuring in low voices, their faces obscured by the dim light. "Who's there?" a voice calls out suddenly, sharp and alert. The group freezes, every instinct telling them to retreat, but Jack stands his ground. The voice comes from one of the survivors, a woman with a rifle slung across her shoulder. She's standing near the fire, scanning the shadows. Jack takes a step forward, his hands raised in surrender. "I'm alone. Just passing through." The woman's eyes narrow, but she doesn't immediately raise her weapon. "You sure about that?" Before Jack can respond, a man steps forward, his face gaunt and weathered. "Let him be," he says, his voice calm but firm. "We're not looking for trouble." Jack hesitates. This is too easy. But the man's expression is tired, and there's something about the way he carries himself that makes Jack think he's telling the truth. "We're just trying to get by," Jack says cautiously. "We don't want any trouble either." The man studies Jack for a moment, then gestures toward the fire. "If you want to stay for a while, you can. We've got food and water." Jack looks back toward the entrance, where Ella and Mark are waiting. He motions for them to come forward, and after a moment, they cautiously approach, weapons still at the ready. The woman with the rifle watches them closely but doesn't raise her weapon. As Mark and Ella join him, Jack introduces them to the group, for survivors, each worn and weathered by the apocalypse. They seem honest enough, though Jack knows that appearances can be deceiving. Still, there's a certain desperation in their eyes, the same desperation he's seen in himself and his group. These are people who want to survive, who are willing to trust in others, even if it means taking a risk. "I'm Jack," he says, offering his hand. "This is Mark and Ella. We're just looking for a place to rest." The man nods. "We're all just looking to survive. We've been holed up here for a while, but the road ahead's been tough." As the survivors sit around the fire, the warmth of the flame seems to offer a temporary escape from the cold, harsh reality of the world outside. For the first time in what feels like forever, Jack allows himself a moment to relax. They may not be out of danger yet, but for tonight, they have found a glimmer of hope. But Jack knows all too well that hope is fragile, and in this world, it can be snuffed out as quickly as it appears. Tomorrow, the fight will continue. But for tonight, they have survived another day. The fire crackles and spits, its warmth offering a brief comfort to the group of survivors. For a few hours, there's an almost peaceful silence among them. The tension of the previous days, the constant movement, and the constant fear of betrayal or attack seems to lift, if only for a moment. But Jack knows all too well that this calm is fleeting. The world they now live in is anything but predictable. They sit around the fire, quietly eating what little food they have left. The rations they've gathered are sparse, but it's enough for tonight. The group of strangers they've found shelter with doesn't seem eager to share too much about their pasts, and Jack respects that. They, too, are survivors, just like him, Mark, and Ella. The woman with the rifle, who introduced herself as Claire, looks at Jack, her gaze sharp but not unfriendly. "Where are you headed?" she asks, breaking the silence. Jack hesitates, glancing at Mark and Ella before answering. "We're trying to make it to a safe zone. A place where people are still holding out. I don't know if it's real or not, but it's the only thing we've got to go on." Claire nods slowly, as if weighing his words. "You're not the first group to come through here with that story." People come looking for safe zones all the time. Some find them. Some don't. She looks over her shoulder at the others sitting around the fire. We've been stuck here for a while now. The roads are too dangerous, the undead are everywhere, and other survivors, well, they're not all friendly. Jack can't help but feel a pang of doubt. If this safe zone doesn't exist, if it's just a rumor like Claire suggests, then what's left for them? They can't keep running forever. At some point, they'll have to stop and fight or die trying. Have you been to this safe zone? Jack asks, his voice more cautious than he intends. Claire shakes her head. We tried. A few months ago. We made it closer than we are now. But the undead were everywhere, and we couldn't get through. We lost some good people. Her expression darkens, and the flickering firelight makes her face look more worn than it already is. We came back here. It's safer for now. The silence that follows is thick with unspoken words. Mark shifts uncomfortably beside Jack, his eyes scanning the surroundings nervously. Ella, too, seems unsettled, her eyes darting from person to person. The quiet tension is palpable. The survivors they've just met are guarded, their eyes always watching, always looking for signs of danger. It's clear that they've seen things that have made them wary of anyone and everyone. Finally, it's the man with the gaunt face who speaks up. I'm Ryan, he says, his voice low. We've been holding out here because it's better than being out there. But the longer we stay, the worse things get. There's talk of a horde moving through the area. Jack feels the blood drain from his face. A horde. The last thing they need is a horde of undead sweeping through the region, tearing everything apart. The thought of facing one is terrifying, and the knowledge that they are likely trapped here in the warehouse with no easy escape fills him with dread. How long until they arrive? Jack asks, his voice tense. Ryan shakes his head. We don't know for sure. Could be days. Could be hours. But if we stay here, we're sitting ducks. Jack exchanges a look with Ella and Mark. They've been on the move for days, and the thought of leaving the relative safety of the warehouse feels like a gamble, one they might not survive. But if they stay here, they're in just as much danger. Either way, it seems like death is inevitable. Then we move, Jack says, determination hardening his voice. We don't wait around for the horde to find us. If we leave now, maybe we can get a head start. Claire looks at him, her expression skeptical. You don't know the terrain. The roads are full of undead. There are no guarantees out there. Jack meets her gaze. I know. But staying here is just as dangerous. We'll take our chances. There's a long pause, but eventually, Claire nods. Fine. But you better be ready. We're all in this together now. As the decision is made, the group begins preparing. The fire is extinguished, and the survivors gather their things quickly and quietly, their movements urgent but controlled. There's no time to waste. The night sky is now fully dark, and the cold air bites at their skin, but the fear of the horde gives them all the adrenaline they need to move. Stay close, Jack says, taking the lead. Move fast, but quietly. Don't attract any attention. With their weapons in hand and their bags slung over their shoulders, the group exits the warehouse and heads into the night. The moonlight casts long, eerie shadows on the streets as they move cautiously through the desolate town. The wind howls through the empty buildings, adding to the unease in the air. As they make their way through the dark streets, Jack can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. The hairs on the back of his neck stand on end, and he can't help but glance over his shoulder every few moments, half expecting to see something, or someone, lurking in the shadows. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional creak of a building in the wind. But as they reach the outskirts of the town, Jack hears something, a distant sound, almost like a whisper on the wind. He stops in his tracks, signaling for the others to do the same. He holds up a hand, and the group falls silent. In the distance, there's a faint growling sound. It's unmistakable. The undead are close. They've run out of time. Move! Jack commands, his voice low but urgent. Keep moving. The group breaks into a sprint, heading toward the tree line at the edge of the town. Every step feels like an eternity as the growls of the undead grow louder, closer. The horde is on its way, and the only choice they have now is to survive, by any means necessary. The calm before the storm is over. Now, the fight for survival begins again. The wind picks up as the survivors sprint through the dark streets, the distant growls of the undead growing louder with every passing second. Jack can feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, his heart pounding in his chest as he leads the group toward the tree line. Behind them, the sound of the horde grows ever closer, the unmistakable shuffle of the undead's footsteps echoing off the empty buildings. Every corner they round, every turn they take, feels like they're running out of time. They're too exposed here. The open streets give them nowhere to hide, and Jack knows they won't make it far if they don't get to cover soon. The edge of the forest is just ahead, but the undead are relentless, and there's no guarantee the trees will offer them safety. Keep moving! Jack shouts, glancing over his shoulder. We're almost there. Ella and Mark are right behind him, their faces grim but determined. Claire and Ryan follow closely, their movements quick and silent as they stay in formation. It's clear that they've all been through this before, but the urgency in the air makes every step feel like a battle in itself. They're pushing their limits, but the fear of the horde behind them gives them no choice. Finally, they reach the tree line. The dark silhouettes of the trees loom in front of them, and for a moment, it seems like they've made it. Jack pauses just long enough to scan the surroundings, looking for any signs of movement. The underbrush is dense, providing some cover, but it also creates obstacles that slow them down. Head in, now! Jack urges, his voice tight. Move through the trees. Stay low. The group plunges into the forest, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth and the thick foliage. Jack leads the way, keeping a steady pace but always alert to the sounds around him. The growling behind them seems to be fading for now, but Jack knows it's only a matter of time before the undead catch up. We need to keep pushing, Jack says, his mind racing. The horde won't stop until they find us. As they move deeper into the woods, the sounds of the undead are drowned out by the rustling of leaves and the crunching of twigs underfoot. The darkness in the forest is almost complete, the only light coming from the pale glow of the moon above. The trees seem to close in around them, adding to the oppressive sense of isolation. But at least they're hidden, at least for the moment. They push forward, their breathing heavy, their legs aching from the effort. Jack can feel the weight of the world pressing down on him as he leads them through the dense woods. He glances over at Ella, whose face is pale but determined. Mark is close behind, his eyes scanning the shadows for any signs of movement. Suddenly, there's a rustling noise to their left, just off the path. Jack's heart skips a beat as he instinctively pulls out his weapon, his eyes narrowing as he scans the darkness. A figure moves in the shadows, a faint silhouette barely visible against the trees. Jack raises his hand, signaling for the group to stop. Hold up, Jack whispers, his voice barely audible. Stay quiet. Everyone freezes, their eyes trained on the dark shape ahead. For a moment, it feels like time itself has stopped, the silence so thick it feels suffocating. The rustling continues, but there's no sign of the undead, just the unsettling sounds of the forest at night. And then, the figure steps forward. It's a person. A survivor. Jack's breath catches in his throat. They were hoping for this moment, a chance to connect with someone who might know more about the safe zone, or who might offer some help in escaping the horde. But the sight of the stranger is met with caution. Jack raises his weapon slightly, unsure whether this person is friend or foe. Who's there? Jack calls out, his voice firm but not aggressive. The figure halts, raising their hands in surrender. I'm not here to cause trouble, the person says, their voice rough from what sounds like days of travel. I'm just trying to survive. Jack doesn't lower his weapon immediately, but he can sense the honesty in the person's voice. The stranger steps closer, their face now illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. I'm Nate, the person introduces themselves, their eyes scanning the group warily. I've been on the move for days. I heard the noise from the horde. Thought I'd try to get ahead of them. Jack studies Nate for a long moment, considering the risk. Another stranger could mean more danger, but they have little choice. The horde is closing in, and it's clear that Nate is trying to get out of the same mess they are. Still, Jack can't help but feel the weight of the decision. Trusting anyone in this world is a gamble. You're heading away from the horde, right? Jack asks cautiously. Nate nods. That's the plan. I've seen the horde coming this way. I've been trying to find somewhere safe, but it's all a mess out there. Jack exchanges a look with Ella, Mark, Claire, and Ryan. It's a tough decision. But they don't have much time left. Every minute spent debating feels like a wasted opportunity. The horde could be right behind them. You can join us, Jack says after a long pause. But no funny business. We're not here to make friends. We just need to survive. Nate nods quickly, a relieved smile flickering across his face. I understand. Same here. Let's get out of here. With that, they move on, keeping a cautious distance but continuing together through the woods. Jack doesn't know if Nate can be trusted, but right now, they need all the help they can get. As the group ventures further into the forest, Jack's thoughts race. He knows that even if they make it through the night, tomorrow will bring more challenges, more danger. The horde is still out there, and they are running out of time and options. But for now, they're alive. And as long as they're alive, they will fight for each other, fight for survival, and fight for the slim hope that there is still a place out there where they can be safe. The world may have taken everything from them, but as long as they have their will to fight, they haven't lost everything.